there is a great advantage to being able to say a shiur at which they're serving cholent. Because if the shiur doesn't please you, at least you have the benefit of the cholent. The Gemara in Shabbos, which you should have in front of you, says, Tonu Rabbanon, Mitzvahs Channukah, the mitzvah of Channukah is named Ishu KSY, that every person should have at least one flame in his home, one candle, and people who want to do a little bit extra. Each person would have a nail, and then if you want to do even more, so we have two shitas. That the first day you light 8, and then from there on, you gradually diminish. So on the first day it's 8, then it's 7, then it's 6, and so on. Michel says that the first day you light 1, and then you gradually increase. Amar Ula, so the Amar Ula says, Pligi Batrei Amiroi b'Ma'arov. In Eretz Yisrael, there were two Amiroim who were arguing about this. One of them said, time of the Beis Shammai, that the reason of Beis Shammai was Keneged Yomim HaNichnosin, that you lit 8 because of the fact that there were 8 days that were coming, so you acknowledge the fact that the Yontif had 8 days, and that's you signal the fact that it had 8 days by lighting the first day 8, which was really what the nace was, that or one of the nisim was that it lasted for 8 days. And Beis Hillel says that every day you count according to the days that you're experiencing. So the first day you're experiencing the first day, that's the first day of the nace, second day of the nace, and so on. So that's what one of them said. That was the reasoning behind Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And the second one said as follows: Chadam atam Beis Shammai, atam Beis Shammai keneged Pori Hachag. On Sukkot, Bnei Yisrael brought korbanos. So they brought korbanos that corresponded to, according to Chazal, it corresponded to Bnei Yisrael. Every day was the same number of sheep, and they brought pelim, they brought oxen, so they brought every day one less. They started out with 14, and 13, and 12, and so on. So every day was one less. So in as much as we find that there is such a thing as diminishing the number, so that was Beis Shammai's logic, that you follow the Pori Hachag according to the way they celebrated Sukkot. And Beis Hillel says, because when it comes to Kiddush, you always go up, you don't go down. So you start with 1 and you increase. There were 2 elderly Chachamim Tzidain. One did like Beis Shammai and one did like Beis Hillel, and each one gave the reason for what they were doing. One said, Keneged Pori Hachag, so it seems rather rather simple to say that they were acting according to whether or not you look at the number of days that are facing you or you look at the number of days that you're experiencing. That seems a pretty simple logic. But what connection could there possibly be between Sukkot and Channukah? Why are we going to Sukkot to find a reason for how we're going to celebrate Channukah? What's the bridge there? And in any event, what do Pogei Achag, what do oxen have to do with the lights of the menorah? So Rashi in Chumash, when he's talking about the Pogei Achag, so he says, he's talking really about Shmini Atzeres. So he says that there's a Medrash that all the days of Yontif, hikrivu keneged shivim umais. They brought karbonos somehow that corresponds to the 70 nations of the world. Ukeshiboin laleches, and when they're about to leave the Yontif, Omar lehem amokim b'lakosh mikem asuli sid ketana kadesh yana mikem. I want you to make you one small meal. Just forget, leave out the umay sa'ila. So according to this Medrash, so the Pogei Achag, if you add them all up, 14 the first day, 13 the second day, it adds up to 70. So the reason that they did that was somehow, and Rashi says, that it was Megan on them. He didn't say it over here, but he said, elsewhere he said that the Pogei Achag were Megan on the Umay So'ilam, that they brought these Pogei Achag to somehow be a protection for the nations of the world. And then at the end, after the seven days, we've already brought 70 for the Umay So'ilam, we were Megan on the Umay So'ilam. So now, Hashem says, okay, one day is just us. It's a personal, private day. It's just with me. So one must wonder, what is it that we're doing, and why is it that we're doing to be Megan on the Umay So'ilam? What's and again, what does be Megan on Umay So'ilam have to do with Sukkot? So I'm going to take you on a little trip here. I want to talk first about the whole concept of pogim, about oxen. Number one, we should not be surprised that there is in the Merkava that Yeshaya and in Yechezkel saw that the Merkava has, as one of the bearers of the KSY HaKoved, is a sheikh, an ox. And we also know that just as there is a Merkava Kedosha, that there is as it is a divine holy chariot, there is also a Merkava Tamea. So there is something that corresponds to what we find in Kedusha in the kingdom of evil. The kingdom of darkness is also supported by, amongst other things, a sheir. So what does that sheir represent? I'd like to suggest that the Shiur represents a concept of control. That the human being has been granted a capacity to affect himself and his world. And that's expressed by a number of different qualities. So for example, we exercise or try to exercise control over our world by our intellect, our thoughts, our information, our scholarship, our discovery, our technology. So we affect our world or try to control our. It's off. Huh?
Something's interfering with it. Let's pay attention. Maybe you gotta take your cell phone. It might be your cell phone. I'll just hold it.
All right.
I'll hold it. It's probably something.
Still not working. Okay, just went out again. All right, it went out again. So one of the ways in which we control our world is through our intellect. Another way in which we control our world is through our industry. We work hard. And a third way in which we control our world is through perseverance. That's different than working hard. We can work hard for a short period of time, but perseverance means that we persist. We keep on until we're successful. Those are all qualities of the ox. The ox is an instrument with which man tries to control his world. For thousands of years, the ox was the way in which the economy went. We plowed the ground with an agrarian world. The economy was supported. It's too loud. Too something. Huh? What?
It's a bad connection.
So,
Something is interfering with. There's something interfering with it.
Yeah, that'll help. Put the mic near the speaker.
Let's see what happens.
You can pick up.
Maybe the rabbit gets you closer to the mic. Maybe the mic closer to the mouth.
it's pretty loud, I think. I don't know.
You can pick up. You can pick up.
There's no static now.
Okay. Try again.
Okay. So those three qualities have given man control over his environment. And for thousands of years, the ox was that strong, persevering, industrious animal that enabled man to take control as best as he could, even though he wasn't in control of the climate, but it did allow him to, as best as man could, to control some of the elements in his life. It's also true, and most importantly true, that the Merkava HaKadosha is also dependent on those three qualities. Kedusha will only respect and only respond to the fact that we apply our minds in a disciplined way, and that we are yigeim, that we work hard, and that we persevere. Those three qualities are the qualities that come from or through the energy of the Shiur Sheb'Merkava. what happens when it falls under the power, the force of the Merkava Tamea, is that those qualities lead to arrogance. We know we are in control. Ultimately, that arrogance leads to a rejection of any kind of real dependence on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't need God. We're capable now of taking control of our lives. The fact that people turned to God was because they recognized that they could not control their lives. But as gradually as we moved forward and we progressed in the sciences, so there was less and less reliance on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there was less and less dependence on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the world became less and less moral and less responsive to any kind of ethical or spiritual discipline. So the Merkava Tamea also has a share, and all of those qualities are used in a way which distances man from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They tell a story that the scientists, contemporary scientists, came to God and said, God, we don't need you anymore because we can now make man ourselves in our laboratories. We can make man. So God said, okay, go ahead. So they ran to get some dirt, and he said, make your own dirt. So that's the nature of the Merkava Tamea. However, within the Merkava Akdesha, so those qualities lead to the acquisition of Kedusha, the acquisition of Torah, of Aveda, all of the good midas. But one needs to use all of those qualities in order to move forward. Interesting is that there is a magical relationship between the number 8, which we will come to shortly, and one of the products of the Merkava Kedusha. If we recognize that we have to work hard in order to earn a relationship with the Rabbi Shalom, if we recognize we have to work hard in order to perfect ourselves so that we're deserving of a relationship with the Rabbi Shalom, so one of the products of that is anivus, that we're humble. We're humble in the sight of God. We walk humbly with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One of the numbers that has this peculiar quality is the number 8. It says, the Gemara says that a Talmid Chacham is permitted to have a shminis shebeshminis, an eighth of Gaiva, 1/64. So the number 8 has the following quality. If you take 8 and you multiply it 8 by 8, so that's 64. 6 and 4, those are the numbers of 64. 6 and 4 are 10. And 10 are 1 and 0. You have the number 1. So if you start out with 1 times 8, you have 8. 2 times 8 is 16. That's 1 and 6, that's 7. 3 times 8 is 24. That's 2 and 4 is 6. 4 times 8 is 32. 3 and 2 are 5. So as you go, the number of times, the more you multiply 8, the smaller the number, until you finally get to 8 times 8, and you get to the number 1. A shmini shebeshminis is 8 times 8. So that's how much gaiva you can have, 1/64. That equals 1. In any event, we find that the Yevonim were very much into this world of this outer world, this world of the Merkava Hatamea, the world of science, where there were early scientists, and they were very much into their pantheon of gods and trying to control the world in a variety of ways. But the one thing that they did not want to recognize was the sovereignty of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the discipline of Torah. So one of the things that they did was to say, Kisvu lachem al keren ha-shoyer. This shoyer, which represents in Kedusha, working hard, learning, growing in Torah, and working and persevering until you're successful and changing and growing, those midas they wanted to transform into the Merkava Hatmeah, to use them in pursuit of the many things that they were all about. So their orders to Klal Yisrael were Kisvu lachem al keren ha-shoyer. You have to write out the keren ha-shoyer. You want to take it. You don't want the Rabbi Shalom's sovereignty. You don't want him to rule your life. You want to rule your life. You want to be the boss. You want to make up your own rules, and you want to make up your own pursuits so that it conforms to what we would like. That being said, I want to now take you into an interesting place. The Yom Tovim that we have, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach, and Shavuos, are all Yom Tovim that we celebrate today, as the Ariyah Kodesh and Sforim HaKadoshim say, because the energy that enabled that first Yom Tov to take place cycles. It comes back every year and offers us its strength. So, for example, Pesach, when Klal Yisrael were Yotze B'chayrim, they went out to freedom. So we have available to us that power of setting ourselves, of liberating ourselves from Avdus. That's the thing that we want to think about, that's the thing we want to focus on when it comes to Pesach, is to use the Eir of Cherus in order to free ourselves from the different kinds of Avdus, to which unfortunately everybody has some level of bondage to something. So we want to break loose, and we can take advantage of the Eiros that took place initially on Pesach, and now it's cycling and it's offering us that again. The same thing is true of Shavuos. On Shavuos, we can make a commitment that we can create kelim to receive the Torah, because the Matan Torah, that power of Matan Torah, cycles on us and offers us on Shavuos the wherewithal to make an acquisition in Torah. Rosh Hashanah is the day that Adam Harishon ate of the Eitz Hadas, and when he was judged, so that quality cycles on us on Rosh Hashanah. Yom Kippur is the day that Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the third 40 days on Har Sinai, and when the Rebbeinu Shalom gave him the second luchos and said, Solachti kidvarecha, it was a day in which the Rebbeinu Shalom forgave Klal Yisrael for the chet of the Chet HaEgel. So that becomes the day in which Slicha and Mechila cycles on us every year, so that we can take advantage of doing tshuva and having a clean slate. Sukkot is supposed to celebrate the fact that we went out into the desert and that the Rebbeinu Shalom protected us from all of the elements of the harsh wilderness by surrounding us with Inyanei HaKoved, clouds of glory. And in the Inyanei HaKoved we had the Mon, and we had the Be'er Shel Miriam, and we had the Rebbeinu Shalom saw to it that our shoes would not turn into rags, and that our clothes were cleaned every day, and that the Nechoshim and the Akrabim, all the different wild predatory and dangerous kinds of animals were wiped out. When the mountains were leveled, the valleys were lifted. We could walk on a level. It was the Inyanei HaKoved were some kind of a very, very remarkable kind of a phenomenon for 40 years in the desert. So on Sukkot, ostensibly, we are offered that protection, the tzeil, the shadow of a HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We go out of our homes and we walk into the trust, the faith, the bitachon in Ribbono Shel Olam's protection. But Sukkot is different. And it's different because that phenomenon of the Inyanei HaKovod did not originate then. Chilus and Pesach originated then and cycles on us. The Matan Torah originated then and cycles on us. The energy and the power of the Inyanei HaKovod comes from Lo Osid Lovei. It comes from the time in which Klal Yisrael will be free of all of the Ummei Ha'olam, and where the Ribbono Shel Olam will offer us a perfect world where we will be free to learn and to grow and to daven and to do all of the things that will bring us closer to Him. And it's a time in which the Psukim in Nevi'im talk about a time in which we'll be surrounded, each person with a chuppah of kavod and glory. The Tchias HaMesim, that time in which everything, there will be no evil, no Yetzer Hara, we will be absolutely, completely free to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to grow and be Nehenna from Zil HaShechina. That energy is the energy from which the Inyanei HaKovod were available to Klal Yisrael. And now when we celebrate the fact that Ribbono Shel Olam, by going out into the Sukkah, the Ribbono Shel Olam protected Klal Yisrael, it's a celebration of a nes that began in the future, went back into the past, and now we are celebrating that energy that comes from Lo Osid Lovei. So it's a very different yontif. And that's the reason why it's the yontif in which there is such extraordinary simcha, more so. Even there's a mitzvah of simcha on Pesach and a mitzvah of simcha on Shavuos. But the mitzvah of simcha on Sukkot, we know there's a simchas beis she'eva, and the mitzvah of simcha is repeated multiple times by Sukkot, where it's only mentioned once by Shavuos, and I'm not even sure it's mentioned at all by Pesach, but the mitzvah of Simcha on Sukkot, and we know how we celebrate Sukkot, finally with Simchas Torah, but the connection between Simcha, this unique connection between Simcha and Simchas Torah, is because it's the Simcha of that ultimate conclusion of all of history, and the end of all the suffering, all the pain, and the ability to be completely connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's living in a certain sense in the promise of the future today. That's the energy that we have in Sukkot. The question over here is, let me move into the issue of number 8. Number 8, the Baral said the number 8 represents the number that rises above nature. So our world was built in 7 days. We read about in Bereshit, the Ribbono Shel Olam created the world in 7 days. But the Ribbono Shel Olam also created the world in 7 days. He created an 8th day. But that 8th day is not forthcoming until the end of our world as we know it. The Gemara says in several places that it's a world of 6,000 years. Then the earth is fallow, the world is fallow for a year, and then comes the Olam HaTchiyah, the Olam of resurrection, that perfect world that we are all anticipating. So that number 8, Maharal says, is a number that's associated with things that are l'mayla min hateva, things that transcend the ordinary, that transcend nature, defies all of the nature, all of the rules of nature as we're familiar with them. So he says for that reason, Bris Milah takes place on the 8th day because it's our connection to something which is above nature. There's an instrument that was called a Shminis, and Tehillim you have that David HaMelech composed certain Tehillim for the Shminis. So they say that the Shminis was an instrument with 8 strings, which was played in the Beis Hamikdash because the 8 strings represented the fact that there was a music that comes from the future, from Ein Matchiach. So we have an association. We have an association with the number 8 that is something that represents an awesome power of a dimension of difference and wonder that comes from the future. Beis Shammai believes that the Nes Channukah, the defeat of this powerful army, and the Nes of the Neres Channukah comes from that Eir that is an Eir Chayzer. It's an energy that comes from the future into the past. So it comes from the future, went into Sukkot, and now becomes available to us on Chanukah. So the connection between Sukkot and Chanukah is that both of these miracles draw upon the same source. The nes of the Neres, the nes of the victory over the armies of the Yevonim were both drawn from that nes of the future. So he looks for a connection with the Porei HaChag, which were offered Keneged Umay Ha'olam. We'll talk maybe a little bit about that. But he also talks about the fact that since it's an Eir Chayza, since it's an energy that comes to us from the future, for that reason we start from 8 and we go backward. Go from 8 and move towards the thing, because that's coming to us from the end, and we move forward. I believe there's another reason, and that is because there's a commentary here about the nature of what happens when people, and especially the Umay Ha'olam, indulge the Merkava Tameah. The ultimate fate of those people who reject HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who depend on their own genius, their own industry, their own perseverance, their own intelligence, the people who are invested in the fact that they are the ones who are going to make this work because they're in charge, it leads to ultimate self-destruction, self-immolation. If you take a look at where the world is going, the more we become in control, the more we believe that we don't need the Rabbi Michel, the more unhappy we become, the more we are at risk. So the world is on the brink of nuclear destruction, because the nuclear armaments are in the hands of complete mishugoyim, and no one knows exactly how or when someone is going to do something insane. Our culture and our society is drifting towards, increasingly, towards things that destroy the fabric of our society. There's more crime, more suicides, more depressions, more divorces, more addiction. I mean, it's just, when you look around, people should ask themselves, with all of the liberal agendas, people should be happier, and people are increasingly less happy. The world is a very violent and a tragically unhappy place. So ultimately, what happens with the Merkava Tameah is that it self-destructs. So the Porei HaChag become less and less, because the direction of a culture that is not relating to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that insists on its own ingenuity and believes that for that reason, that it's immune to behave morally or ethically, the fate of that is that it moves towards kloya. It moves, as Rashi says, it moves ultimately towards complete destruction. So that's the reason that it goes less and less. And as on Channukah, we light these flames to signify the fact that, like the Parei HaChag, that we brought these karbonos because we wanted to offset the way in which the nations of the world interpreted the powers of the Shiur Merkava. So we brought the Shiur with Kedusha, we brought it with Anivus, we brought it with humility. We tried to, in some way, to counteract the Shiur of the Merkava Tamea. But as the nations of the world became more and more resistant and more rejecting the attempt of Klal Yisrael to set a standard, there was less and less reason for us to bring Parei HaChag. So, with the gradual descent of the nations of the world into this abyss of Tumah, we brought less and less Purim to correspond to that because we were less and less able to affect that change. So that's the logic of Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai says we start out with 8 because we're going to follow the example of Sukkos and Channukah both draw on the same wellspring of Kedusha, of energy. Therefore, we're going to follow that pattern for some of the reasons that we suggested. Comes along Beis Hillel, and Beis Hillel says, we find another relationship with 8. You, Beis Shammai, say the relationship with 8 is with the Olam HaTchiyah. So you're going from the future into the past and back. We find that there's a concept of Channukah HaMishkan. Channukah HaMishkan took place in 8 days. There was Yemei Miluim, and Rosh Chodesh Nisan was the day in which, there was the first day in which the Mishkan was inaugurated. So, there's a Rashi in Megillah. Rashi in Megillah says, there's this rule, a Malin Bakedesh. It's a rule throughout Shas. A Malin Bakedesh. You go upwards. Whenever there's any kind of an opportunity to move from one level to another, you don't go down, you go up. So Rashi says, where does this come from? Where does this rule come from? So Rashi says in Megillah Chavav, he says, Tosefta. It's a Baraisa, Malin Bakedesh. How do we know this? The Chsiv, it says, Vayokem Moshe es HaMishkan, that Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who put up the Mishkan. Everybody else tried to put it up, and they couldn't put it up. So he started putting it up on the first day of the Miluim, and finally, on the 8th day of the Miluim, he put it up, and he didn't take it down. Every day, otherwise, he put it up, took it down, every day, but it was... So, the Tosefta continues, Betzalel also. Betzalel was the craftsman. He was the one who made it. Moshe, Shoy Godel Mimenu Hekima. But it was Moshe Rabbeinu who was greater than Betzalel, who's the only one who could put it up. So that's the source of Malin Bakedesh. And then he speaks about Lemiridim because he brings another source for that. But the point over here is that inasmuch as the Mishkan is the source of that rule of Malin Bakedesh, and here we're talking about the fact that we want to celebrate the Channukah HaMishkan, which took place by Klal Yisrael in the time when they triumphed over the Yevonim. So we should follow the example of the Mishkan. Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who successfully put it up, and the reason that it was Moshe Rabbeinu rather than anybody else and rather than B'Tzalel is because Malin B'Kodesh. Therefore, we have to emphasize the rule of Malin B'Kodesh, and therefore we should be starting up with one and then moving on to. I want to suggest the following: that there are two things that happen simultaneously. When we light the Channukah Lech, we are participating in something where we are approaching it as Yechidim, each one of us. Each one of us is fulfilling this mitzvah of Channukah Samizbeach in a way which should offer us a time of hischadshus, a time of adding light into our lives and making a statement about the Chachmas HaTorah versus Chachmas Chitzonius, about the fact that we are a people that's an inward people and not an outward people, that we're a nation that in our humility, we're totally responsible and bottled to the Rabbi Michel. So, V'osuli Migdosh, Mishkan v'shachanti b'seichel. There is a concept that a Mishkan, every person is a Mishkan, and that the Rabbi Michel wants to cause his Shekhinah to rest in every single person. So there is something that's to be said about the fact that when we approach the Channukah Lech, that we approach it as Yechidim of Malin B'Kodesh, because that's the only way you can grow. You can't grow by taking tafas the meruba. You can't grasp too much all at once. You have to start out little by little. So you start out by one, Malin B'Kodesh. That's the rule for a Yochid. But there's also a concept that we are not only Yechidim, but that we belong to a klal. The power of Beis Shammai, in that the Nes Channukah also draws its energy from that time when Klal Yisrael is going to realize its destiny. Klal Yisrael is going to realize everything that it's tachlis, everything that the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted them to be, means that the Channukah Lech, even though we follow the position of Beis Hillel, but the fire of the Channukah Lech comes to us from the future. And it promises that not only we as Yechidim, but that we as members of Klal Yisrael are convinced of, and we have this unshakable conviction that we're moving towards that time in which there'll be no suffering and no pain and no death, and in which there will be this ultimate, absolute, perfect world of simcha and iskalvus, the Rebbeinu Shalom. So when we light the Channukah Lech, even though the flame is the flame of building ourselves slowly so that we can be kalim to receive the Rebbeinu Shalom's light, but we also need to know that everything that happened on Chanukah is something that draws its power and its strength from a time which promises that all of our burdens and all of our problems will no longer afflict us, and Chanukah for that reason is also a time of simcha. It's a time of simcha because of what it promises, and it's a time of achievement and ischadrus because of the fact that we are Mishkan. So we have this dual identity where we are Yechidim and we build our personal Mishkan, and where we are members of Klal Yisrael, where we are promised the ultimate Geula, Ben Shalom should grant that we should be zeicha this Channukah, Mitzvah Hashem, to celebrate the Channukahs Abayis Shlishi, Abayis Shalesh, with the Gula Shlema.